It was a sunny afternoon, and a group of children, including Ju-won, were gathered in the open field, laughing as they played a word game. The teacher instructed them to name three-syllable words, and Ju-won blurted out, "widower." The other children turned to the teacher, puzzled, and asked what it meant. The teacher chuckled and replied, describing a widower as someone who can do anything. Ju-won thought to herself, her father was also a widower, so if he could do anything, maybe he could get her a brother. Ju-won's father, Mr. Yoon, a devoted restaurant owner, waited for Ju-won to arrive from school. He was always busy running his restaurant, but his love and care for his daughter never wavered. She looked up at him with her curious eyes and asked, "Dad, are you a widower?" Taken aback, he responded with a hesitant nod. Seizing the moment, that if he was indeed a widower, he should get her a brother, someone to play with, since he was always busy at the restaurant. While walking to their apartment, Mr. Yoon playfully suggested that a new family was moving in and that it might be possible to meet a new brother. Nearing the apartment, they saw the new family moved into the unit above them and Mr. Yoon went to introduce them, meeting San-ha and his parents, Mr. Kim and Young-hee. While Ju-won seems so happy to meet a new boy, she was ecstatic calling her brother, but San-ha seems cold. The encounter was polite but tinged with tension. Young-hee seemed uncomfortable, her gaze a mix of wariness and sadness, adding an awkward edge to their first meeting. The reason behind Young-hee's behavior began to surface. Young-hee was deeply affected by the recent loss of her daughter, an emotional wound that hadn't healed. Blaming her son, San-ha, for not protecting his younger sister, she grew distant from him, her grief fueling arguments with her husband. Their quarrel grew so loud that it drew the attention of a passing police officer, who, upon learning Mr. Kim was the town's new chief, quickly retreated. In the officer's rushed exit, the neighbors caught snippets of the tragedy that had shaken the family. Later, Mr. Yoon noticed San-ha sitting alone on the stairwell, looking despondent. He approached the boy with a gentle invitation to join them, but San-ha, feeling the weight of his family's grief, declined and returned inside. That night, Mr. Yoon explained the concept of loss to Ju-won, drawing parallels to the absence of her mother, to help her understand the pain others carry in silence. Mr. Yoon urged her to be sensitive to others' feelings. Meanwhile in Mr. Kim's apartment, Mr. Kim, in his own way, tried to comfort San-ha, reminding him that his mother's actions were born out of sadness, not anger. Another evening, Ju-won saw San-ha eating raw ramen alone at staircase, and mentioned it to Mr. Yoon. So, he decided to make a meal for San-ha. When Ju-won tried to offer it to him, he coldly refused. But unworried Ju-won ate happily. Days later, an unexpected guest came to Mr. Yoon's home, Kang Seo-hyun and her son Hae-jun, a meeting arranged by an elderly neighbor as a blind date. Their introduction had a humorous start, with Mr. Yoon accidentally splashing Seo-hyun. While Mr. Yoon and Seo-hyun shared an awkward chat, Ju-won was less enthusiastic, only wanting a brother, not a new mother. Sensing the children's restlessness, the elderly neighbor took Ju-won and Hae-jun to a nearby store, leaving the parents to talk. Meanwhile, Hae-jun seemed thrilled about the prospect of their parents meeting, but Ju-won remained uninterested. At the park, they found San-ha being taunted by neighborhood kids about his late sister. Together, Ju-won, San-ha, and Hae-jun confronted the bullies, standing up for one another. This act of unity brought them closer, leading to an apology from the bully and a shared family dinner. Throughout the meal, Ju-won subtly showed her preference for San-ha, hoping for a close connection with him. After dinner, Hae-jun and his mother left, and Mr. Yoon offered to walk them home. As they departed, Ju-won and San-ha played in the park, unknowingly watched by Young-hee from a distance. In a quiet moment, Ju-won shared a photo of her mother with San-ha, explaining that she looked at it whenever she felt sad. This prompted San-ha to reflect on his own memories of his sister, later stealing glances at her picture, showing he, too, carried the weight of her absence. Around this time, Hae-jun's mother, facing financial struggles, temporarily left him with her sister while she worked. She reached out to Mr. Yoon, seeking both his financial help and permission to visit Hae-jun. When he saw the boy's rough condition, he was surprised. Concerned for the boy's well-being, Mr. Yoon decided to take him into his own home, offering him stability and care during this challenging period. In the midst of it all, tensions continued to brew in San-ha's household. One day, Young-hee noticed an old family photo in her son's drawer, which triggered her grief and frustration. Struggling to accept her own son's happiness around the neighbors, she voiced her desire to leave, burdened by the memories she couldn't escape. San-ha, overhearing this, pleaded with her not to leave, promising to avoid the neighbors if it would keep their family together. Meanwhile, at Mr. Yoon's apartment, Ju-won was upset by Hae-jun's presence, fearing it might bring her a new mother. Despite her protests, Mr. Yoon welcomed Hae-jun, allowing him to call him father. This small gesture of acceptance brought Hae-jun a sense of belonging and joy, knowing he had found a new home. But Ju-won noticed San-ha wasn't joining them as before, so she approached Young-hee, hoping to convince her to let them play. Unaware of the depth of the family's struggles, she didn't realize that Young-hee was preparing to leave both San-ha and his father. Even with the strain in their families, Ju-won, Hae-jun, and San-ha continued to share moments together, laughing and bonding during snack runs to the convenience store. Over time, the three children became inseparable, finding joy in their shared lives. As time passed, their families ended up living under one roof, with Mr. Yoon and Mr. Kim joining households. Peace gradually settled over their home, blending the once distinct families into one. One day, ever practical, Ju-won suggested formalizing their family ties through adoption. This sparked a humorous debate as the family tried to decide who would adopt whom, each laughing at the tangled web they'd created. In a playful yet determined tone, Ju-won declared, sharing their last name is the only chance for her survival.
Ju-won, San-ha, and Hae-jun have grown up together. Despite their close bond, Ju-won struggles at school because of San-ha and Hae-jun's popularity. One day, San-ha pulls out a bag of snacks, explaining that classmates always give them treats. Ju-won happily eats but saves a limited edition snack to share with her friend at school. The next day, Ju-won proudly shows off the snack, saying it was a gift from her brother San-ha. One girl recognizes it as a snack she had given to San-ha, sparking a debate. Over the years, Ju-won also delivers love letters and gifts from girls to San-ha and Hae-jun, but they never reply. Rumors spread, and girls start bullying her, questioning her relationship with the boys since they have different last names. Now in junior high, Ju-won heads to school with San-ha and Hae-jun, complaining that having different last names makes things difficult. Hae-jun advises her to act crazy to fend off bullies, while San-ha tells her to avoid trouble. At school, Ju-won is asked by two girls to deliver letters and gifts to San-ha and Hae-jun. When she warns them that they may not get a reply, they accuse her of keeping the boys for herself. Remembering Hae-jun's advice, Ju-won throws herself into a pond to draw attention and scare the bullies away, acting psycho. The class president, Park Dal, informs Hae-jun, who arrives to shoo the girls off and offers his vest, which Ju-won rejects, saying it smells. San-ha arrives with a clean jacket, covering her up and taking her and Hae-jun away. Ju-won takes pride in her new psycho image, hoping it will keep bullies away. After school, Ju-won, San-ha, and Hae-jun walk home together. When it starts raining, they take shelter, overhearing neighbors gossiping about their incomplete family. During dinner, Ju-won suggests formalizing their family bond to avoid comments. Suddenly, San-ha's phone rings and he ignores it. His dad answers a second call from San-ha's grandmother, creating tension. San-ha excuses himself from dinner. Ju-won complains about the grandmother calling to talk about her daughter's new, happy marriage to a wealthy doctor. Mr. Yoon makes rice balls for Ju-won to take to San-ha. Later, Ju-won and Hae-jun find a new scent in San-ha's room, suspecting he's using expensive shampoo, but he reveals it's a cheap buy-one-get-one-free deal. San-ha pushes them out, reminding them his exams are in 100 days, and later enjoys the rice balls alone. At school, San-ha's teacher urges him to aim for a top Seoul university, but he prefers a local college. On his way out, classmate Huiji invites him to the music room. Meanwhile, Park Dal tells Ju-won that everyone calls her crazy, which Ju-won finds amusing. Later, she spots San-ha with Huiji. Park Dal pulls her aside, revealing that San-ha and Huiji are dating, leaving Ju-won feeling hurt. In the music room, Huiji encourages San-ha to apply to a Seoul university, but he explains that he's not interested. After school, Ju-won confronts San-ha about keeping his girlfriend a secret. San-ha realizes what's upsetting her and smiles. Ju-won explains it hurts to be left out, especially as they live together like family. San-ha responds, "If you're always worried about not being family, then we're not really family." Back at school, Hae-jun notices a stranger taking pictures of him and follows him, discovering he's only photographing Hae-jun. Later, Mr. Yoon is closing the restaurant when Hae-jun's aunt visits with gifts for everyone. Just as she's leaving, their matchmaking neighbor arrives, criticizing the aunt for pairing her sister with Mr. Yoon. Haejun leaves and Mr. Yoon insists he took Haejun in willingly. The aunt advises Haejun not to be a burden and to repay Mr. Yoon someday. Later, Haejun stops by the restaurant, remembering how Mr. Yoon always protected him. At dinner, Haejun expresses gratitude to Mr. Yoon, who has always been there for him. Ju-won, however, is unusually quiet. When asked, she insists nothing's wrong. Sanha mentions they argued, and Mr. Yoon asks, "What did you do?" Ju-won, annoyed, leaves the table. Sanha follows her, apologizing and clarifies that he doesn't have a girlfriend, saying Huiji is actually Haejun's ex. Ju-won returns to the table, still slightly annoyed with Haejun, but happily eating as the family enjoys a lighthearted moment together. The next day, Ju-won walks ahead, distant from Haejun. Curious, he asks Sanha about it, and Sanha explains that she was hurt that Haejun didn't share his relationship with Huiji. Later, Huiji approaches Haejun, trying to rekindle their relationship, but he declines, reminding her she left him for Sanha. She questions Ju-won's involvement, calling her just his sister. In class, Ju-won confides in Park Dal, hinting that Huiji is Haejun's ex. Park Dal relaxes, but then they notice Huiji calling Ju-won over. Ju-won tries to console Huiji, assuming she was dumped, but Huiji clarifies that she ended things. Frustrated, Huiji questions Ju-won's involvement, saying they aren't real siblings. Ju-won responds firmly, saying family is about more than blood. As Ju-won walks away, Huiji follows and pretends to fall, accusing Ju-won of pushing her. The crowd sides with Huiji, calling Ju-won psycho. Park Dal tries to defend her, and Haejun hesitates, caught between both sides. Huiji demands an apology, and even Haejun suggests Ju-won apologize under pressure. Before she can, Sanha arrives, challenging anyone who saw her push Huiji to speak up. When no one does, he warns the bullies to stop spreading lies or he'll expose them. The crowd disperses, and Huiji leaves in frustration. Later, Haejun tries to make amends with snacks. Ju-won teases him, bringing up what Huiji said about not being family. He presents her favorite cake, melting the tension, and they forgive each other. The next day, Ju-won thanks Park Dal with snacks, and Park Dal hints she'd like to see Haejun's basketball game. Later, Haejun sees a woman who looks like his mother and follows her, only to realize she's a stranger. Park Dal witnesses this, and Haejun invites her to dinner to lighten the mood. During dinner, he notices her hands shaking and helps her, asking her to keep what she saw a secret. Back home, Mr. Yoon prepares Haejun's favorite bone soup, essential for his athletic training. Ju-won bickers playfully, and Mr. Yoon gives a thumbs up. The next day, an expensive car arrives at school. A man approaches Haejun on the basketball court, holding a photo. He asks if he is Haejun, and when Haejun confirms, the man tells him, "I'm your father."